And of course, with a story like the investigation, the Joe Matthews investigation of what really happened to Adan Walsh, that wasn't a problem. I mean, it was a nail biter all the way. And I should point, somebody often someone will say, wasn't that a tough or a difficult book to write? And it was, because we all know what happened to poor Adan Walsh and the tragedy that the family has gone through. But what this cop, Joe Matthews, managed, the fact that he would work on without pay on his own for 27 years until he finally proved who really did this thing, I thought that was such an amazing story that the world needs to know that sometimes justice does get done. There are honorable people out there who, no matter what, and without regard to personal gain, will see that the right thing is done. And that's why I wanted to write that book. So to me, it was a positive book as well as a thrilling investigative piece.
I want to switch a little bit to another Florida story, and that is bringing Adam home. And to me, the subtitle is spot on. The abduction that changed America. I think we were forever changed. I think today, and I mentioned it when we were talking, you can't go in a department store today and see a young mother who for a split second has lost her child, in the clothing rack, and not hear that fear in her voice when she's calling that child's name. It changes.
Well, and you'll see, too, stickers at most of the big box stores. It's a Code Adam store. And what that means is that every employee who works at Walmart or Best Buy or, the list is long, Target and the like, all employees are drilled now in what to do if a child is reported missing. The doors are locked. The call goes out. Certain people are in charge. Everybody springs into action. You read the tragic story of what took place at that Sears, and certainly Sears, the Code Adam store. Today, what happened at that Sears store in Hollywood, and it's heartbreaking, heart-rending. That was the most difficult part of writing the book, to have to recreate for the people who do not remember, weren't aware of exactly, well, wait a minute, where did John Walsh come from? What's all this talk about? I had to do that. I had to recreate that so that everybody would be on the same page. But
was it your idea to do this book? Was this your...
Mitchell Kaplan of Books and Books talked to Joe Matthews, who was the cop who led this investigation, the ultimately successful investigation, told him that there was going to be a press conference there in 2008 that was finally going to announce the solution of the case. And Mitchell talked to Joe about how this had come to be after all these years, that they had finally discovered who was responsible, proven it. And Mitchell came to me, as Scott had back in 2000 about Last Train to Paradise, and said, I've got your next book. And I said, well, what is it? And he told me, and then I met with Joe Matthews. I was on the book tour for, I think, the Christmas book, the Charles Dickens book, and was on my way from Palm Beach to Jacksonville and from there to London. And I get this phone call from Mitchell, you've got to talk to this guy. I said, well, I'll be back in a couple of weeks. He said, no, there's going to be a press conference in a couple of days. You need to talk. All right, I call him up at 10 o'clock that night, and I said, well, Joe, I'd love to talk to you more about this, but in the morning I've got to get up to Jacksonville. I've got a noon book event. And he said, I'll meet you anytime you say, 8 o'clock in the morning. We met at a McDonald's just down the road here off I-95, and he handed me a copy of his report. And I said, I'll read this while I'm on the plane to London, and we'll talk when I get back. And that night up in Jacksonville, I said, oh, let me just take a look. And I started reading, and about 2 o'clock in the morning, he said, you call me whenever you want to. I said, well, we'll see. Called him up, answered on the first ring. He said, so what'd you think? I said, I want to do this book. And
I'll be honest with you, when this book first came out, and I was offered an interview with Joe, and I thought, oh, do I want to read this? I mean, well, I couldn't stop reading it. It's Joe who is so compelling. I mean, you know the story of Adan Walsh, but you don't know Joe. And for such incredible goodness and perseverance, this man is incredible. And you told the story so beautifully. Thank you for that.
Well, I was inspired by him. He's a force of nature, a singular human being, and we had a USA Today reporter do a conference interview with us, and at the end she said, you know, guys, I can't write this in the story, but in my opinion, every mother in America needs to read this book. High praise. And he is something else. And if I brought alive 10% of what he is and what he means, then I feel like it's a triumph.
An excellent read.